Pressure does not break you, it reveals you. And right now, whether you are ready to accept it or not, every single time life tightens its grip, every time the stakes rise, the walls close in, and the situation demands more than you feel capable of giving, your emotions expose exactly who you are. Not who you want to be, not who you pretend to be in comfortable moments, but who you actually are, stripped of every mask, every excuse, and every carefully constructed image you built around yourself. When things are easy, anyone can stay calm. Anyone can smile, appear confident, and act like they have everything under control. But that is not the test. The real test begins when chaos hits without warning, when your plans collapse overnight, when the people you counted on walk away, when everything you built starts crumbling, and your mind begins to race, your heart pounds, your breathing tightens, and your emotions start pulling you in every direction at once. In that moment, that raw, unfiltered, defining moment, you have exactly two choices. You either let your emotions control you, or you step up and take control of them. Most people fail right there, not because they lack talent, not because they lack potential, but because they have never once trained their mind for pressure. They have spent their entire lives avoiding discomfort, escaping stress, numbing themselves with distractions, and running from anything that feels threatening. So when real pressure arrives, not the manageable, everyday kind, but the kind that shakes your foundation, they panic. They react before they think. They make decisions driven by fear instead of clarity. And those decisions destroy weeks, months, sometimes years of progress in a single moment. And here is the brutal truth that nobody is saying loud enough. Your emotions are not your enemy. Your lack of control over them is. Until you fix that, pressure will always own you. It will always dictate your actions, your reactions, and ultimately your results. And you will keep wondering why your best efforts keep producing outcomes that don't match your potential. This is exactly why people like David Goggins stand apart from the crowd. Not because he doesn't feel fear, not because pressure doesn't affect him, but because he trained deliberately, painfully, repeatedly to stay functional in chaos, to stay locked in when everything inside him was screaming to quit. He didn't wait for life to become easier. He forced himself to become stronger than the pressure life could produce. And that is the exact shift you need to make in your own life. Because controlling your emotions under pressure is not about suppressing what you feel. It is about mastering what you do with what you feel. It is about recognizing the moment fear kicks in, the moment anger starts rising, the moment doubt begins crawling into your thoughts. And instead of reacting impulsively, you pause, you breathe, you choose your response with intention rather than surrendering to instinct. That sounds simple. It is anything but. Your brain is not wired for discipline. It is wired for survival. When pressure hits, your nervous system doesn't distinguish between a physical threat and a high-stakes situation. It responds the same way, flooding your body with cortisol, tightening your breathing, narrowing your focus to pure survival mode. Your thoughts scatter. Your ability to think clearly begins to deteriorate. And if you don't know how to interrupt that response, you are finished before you even begin. This is where most people fall apart. Not from lack of effort, not from lack of desire, but from a complete absence of emotional discipline. The trained ability to catch yourself in, free fall, and choose a different direction. Here is where you separate yourself from the majority. If you can stay calm while everyone around you is panicking, if you can stay focused while others are distracted by noise, you gain an advantage that cannot be bought or borrowed. You become the person people turn to when the situation is critical. You become the one who executes when others hesitate. And it all begins with something deceptively simple: your breath. Your breathing is directly connected to your autonomic nervous system. When you slow it down deliberately, a long inhale, a controlled exhale, you send a direct signal to your brain that you are not in danger. That signal interrupts the panic response before it fully takes over. It creates a gap, a small but critical space between what you feel and what you do. And in that gap lives your power. But here is the mistake most people make. They wait until they are already overwhelmed, already spiraling, already out of control, and then they try to calm down. By that point, the emotional flood has already taken the wheel. The time to train is before the pressure arrives. The habit of controlled breathing, of mental awareness, of catching the early signals of emotional escalation, these must be built in calm moments so they are available to you in chaotic ones. This is not a motivational concept. This is a practical skill. And like every skill, it is built through repetition, through discomfort, and through the willingness to keep practicing, even when you fail at it repeatedly. Now let's talk about the moment nobody warns you about, because this is where most people silently lose the battle. There will be a moment And it will come when you least expect it, where the pressure becomes so intense that it feels genuinely unbearable. Your mind will tell you that you can know. T-handle it. It will construct a convincing logical argument for why stepping back is a smart decision. It will dress up retreat as wisdom. It will call quitting self-preservation. And this is the turning point that shapes your entire identity. Because if you give in at that moment, if you let the pressure win one more time, you don't just lose that situation, you reinforce a pattern. You teach your nervous system that when things get too intense, escape is the answer. And that pattern will follow you everywhere, into your career, into your relationships, into every goal that starts to demand more from you than feels comfortable. But if you stand your ground in that moment, if you stay present, force yourself to breathe and execute even one small action in the right direction when everything inside you is screaming to stop, you build something that cannot be taught through words alone. You build true emotional resilience, the deep, hard-earned kind that only comes through experience, not the kind that looks composed on the surface, the kind that holds together under real fire. David Goggins didn't develop his legendary mental toughness by reading about it. He developed it by putting himself in situations where his mind and body were begging him to stop and choosing to keep going anyway, not because he felt strong, but because he understood that strength is not a feeling. It is a decision made repeatedly in the moments when weakness would be far easier. The key insight he represents is this: you are not waiting to feel calm before you perform. You are learning to perform while you are not calm. You are learning to move forward while your emotions are unstable, while doubt is loud, while fear is present. Because that is where real growth lives. Not on the comfortable side of your limits, but right at the edge where everything feels uncertain. Once you understand that your emotions are signals and not commands, everything begins to change. Fear becomes a signal that something matters to you, not a command to retreat. Anger becomes a signal that a boundary has been crossed, not a command to destroy. Stress becomes a signal that you are in a moment that requires your full attention, not a command to shut down. When you start interpreting your emotions as information instead of instructions, you stop being controlled by them and start using them strategically. You learn to turn fear into razor-sharp focus. You learn to channel anger into relentless energy. You learn to use stress as a cue to slow down internally while speeding up externally. And instead of being overwhelmed by the intensity of high-pressure moments, you become sharper within them. That is when you become dangerous in the best possible way. Because now pressure doesn't slow you down, it activates you. It triggers a version of yourself that is calm, controlled, and fully locked in on what needs to be done. A version that doesn't hesitate, doesn't spiral, and doesn't waste energy reacting to things outside its control. A version that simply executes. This is what separates average from elite. Not physical ability, not intelligence, not even opportunity. The ability to stay composed when everything is on the line, to keep moving forward with discipline and clarity when every emotion in your body is pulling you toward panic or paralysis. So now it comes down to you. Not tomorrow, not once you feel more prepared. Right now, are you willing to put yourself in uncomfortable situations on purpose, to expose your mind to controlled pressure so it stops treating intensity as a threat? Are you willing to build the daily habit of awareness, catching your emotional reactions before the why hijack your decisions? Are you willing to do the invisible, unglamorous, repetitive work of training your mind the same way athletes train their bodies? Not for the days when conditions are perfect, but for the moments when conditions are catastrophic. Because the pressure is not going to dial it back out of compassion for your comfort. The intensity is only going to increase as the stakes of your goals grow larger. The question is not whether pressure is coming, it is whether the version of you that faces it will be trained or untrained, prepared or reactive, composed or overwhelmed. You cannot control what life throws at you, but you can absolutely control who you are when it arrives. That is where your real power lives. Not in avoiding the storm, but in becoming someone who moves through it with locked-in focus while everyone else is looking for shelter. Build that. Starting today, one breath, one decision, one disciplined response at a time. Because the version of you that dominates under pressure is not a distant possibility. It is the inevitable result of the work you are willing to put in right now. Stop waiting. Start building. The pressure is already here. If this content is helping you grow, subscribe, hit like, and turn on notifications so you never miss what comes next.